Okay, so this is the problem we ended on, right? The standard form of an equation of the circle with endpoints of a diameter -1, 0, and 3, 4. So in this problem, they're not telling you the radius. They're not telling you the center. They are telling you the endpoints of a diameter. So those endpoints are -1, 0, and 3, 4. So those 2 points. And so the diameter is that line segment right there. That is the line that goes right through the middle of the circle. And so having that information, we can find the center because the center is going to be the midpoint of the diameter. The average of the x's, -1 plus 3 over 2, and the average of the y's, 0 plus 4 over 2. And so if you add that up, you're going to have -1 plus 3 is 2, 2 over 2 is 1, and then 0 plus 4 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. To write the equation of a circle, we need to know the center, hk, in this case it's 1, 2, and the radius r, which is the distance from that center to any point on the circle. So we have the center is 1, 2. We know 2 points there on the circle. We can choose either one to figure out the distance from 1, 2 to that point. So we'll just use -1, 0 since it's pretty easy. So our radius is just going to be the distance from the point -1, 0 to the point 1, 2, which is the center. So we will subtract the x's, -1 minus 1, and square that. And we will subtract the y's, so 0 minus 2, and square that. So the radius is going to be the square root of -1 minus 1 squared, which is -2 squared, which is 4. And then you've got 0 minus 2, quantity squared, which is -2 squared, which is also 4. So you've got the square root of 8, and that is 2 times the square root of 2. And so that is the radius. And so we now have the center, hk, and we have the radius, which is 2 square roots of 2. And so we are going to write our equation of our circle, our standard form, which looks like r squared is equal to x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared. So we're just going to fill in the numbers we have. R is 2 square root of 2, so 2 times the square root of 2 squared is equal to x minus h. The center is hk, so the h is 1, so x minus 1, quantity squared, and then our k is 2, so y minus 2 squared. So this would be the standard form of the equation of that circle. Okay, the equation of a circle written in general form looks like this: x squared plus y squared plus ax plus by plus c equals 0. That is just basically what the equation looks like if you square the binomials and then move everything to the left side of the equation so you have 0 on the right. Remember that when you want to square a binomial, this is the pattern that happens. A plus b, quantity squared, is equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And if you have a minus b, quantity squared, that's always going to be a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So keep that in mind. Whenever you have to square a binomial, you should know these patterns by now. You shouldn't have to write a plus b times a plus b and use the distributive property because you get the same pattern every single time. It's always the first thing squared plus 2 times the product of the first and second things plus the second thing squared. So try to get that pattern into your brain so it sticks, and then you can always use that to square binomials. So to square this binomial, x minus 1 quantity squared, we're going to have x squared minus 2x plus 1. And then for y minus 2 quantity squared, we're going to have y squared minus 4y plus 4, and that all equals 8. I just multiplied it all out. And now to get it in the general form, I need to write everything in that order. I'm going to put my x squared first. Then I'm going to put my y squared. Then I'm going to put my x term, so minus 2x. Then I'm going to put my y term, minus 4y. And then I've got my constant, 1 plus 4, which is 5, and that equals 8. But I want to get everything on one side because I want to have 0 on the right side. So I'm going to write the whole thing, x squared plus y squared minus 2x minus 4y minus 3 equals 0. So that's the general form of that equation of a circle. If you are given an equation in general form and you want to write it in standard form, where you can see the radius and the center easily, you have to use a little method we call completing the square, which you may have forgotten, but I will remind you how to do that. So we want to get something in the form r squared equals x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared. So we're going to use the completing the square to get these kinds of expressions, these squared binomials. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to get all the x terms together. So x squared plus 10x and then plus blank, because we want a perfect square trinomial. Then we'll get our y squared, our y terms together, y squared minus 6y plus blank. And then our 25 that's just sitting there, we're going to move that to the right side of the equation for the moment. So it will be out of the way. All right, so we have to figure out what to put in these blank. To do that, you look at the coefficient on x, take half of it and square it. So 10 divided by 2, and then you square it. So that's 5 squared, and that's 25. So you're going to add 25 there. And if you add it on one side of the equation, you need to add it on the other side. Now, for the y squared part, you've got y squared minus 6y plus blank. To figure out what goes in the blank, you take the 6, divide it by 2, and square it. 6 over 2 is 3, square it, you get 9. If you put 9 on that side, you've got to put it on the other side. Okay, so now we can write these two trinomials as perfect squares. So this first one is going to be x plus 5 quantity squared, and the y one is going to be y minus 3 quantity squared, and that's all going to equal 9. So we are now in the standard form of a circle. The only thing that's not exactly standard is the 9. We could write that as 3 squared, because really when you have that standard form of an equation of a circle, you want to write the left side or the other side of the equation as something squared. And we could change this x plus 5 to x minus negative 5, because that's the real, if we're going to be picky about it, that's how the equation is written. It's written with subtraction signs. So we can write that x plus 5 in a way that has a subtraction sign by changing it to x minus negative 5 quantity squared. And so now we can easily see that the center of this circle is h, which is negative 5, k, which is 3, and the radius is, so this is the center, and the radius is 3. Okay, a big note, just because an equation is of the form x squared plus y squared plus ax plus by plus c equals 0 doesn't mean it is necessarily a circle for sure. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't. You have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. And so you're going to get your x's together, x squared. There is no other x term. You don't need to do anything to that. And then you've got plus y squared minus 14y plus blank, because you do want to get a perfect square binomial there. And then you'll move the 49 to the other side by subtracting it. And now you'll put what goes in this blank. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Square it, you got 49. And you need to add 49 to both sides of the equation. All right, so we want to write the left side of the equation in the standard form of a circle, which is x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared equals 0. Sorry, equals r squared. All right, so the x squared part, that's all there is to it, is the x squared. So in order to make it look like this, I could write it x minus 0 quantity squared. That looks right, and it's still x squared. And then the y part, now we can write it as a perfect square binomial. It is y minus 7 squared. And the right side of the equation equals 0. Looks like the equation of a circle, but wait a minute, the radius is 0. So I think we can all agree that if the radius is 0, we are not talking about a circle, because a circle has to have a radius of some positive length. So here we have an equation that says this thing that is being squared right here, and this thing that is a perfect square is adding up to 0. Now we know that all perfect squares are positive. So this is a positive thing plus a positive thing is supposed to give me 0. Well, that's not possible. So the only other possibility is that these two things are actually 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. That's true. So they can't be positive. They have to be 0 because a square can't be negative. So how can we make this thing equal to 0? Well, x would have to be 0 because 0 minus 0 would be 0. And how do I make this thing 0? Well, y would have to be 7 because 7 minus 7 is 0. So the only way to make this equation true is for x to be 0 and y to be 7. And so that is the point 0, 7. So if you ever have a standard form of equation of a circle and you have a 0 on the right side, you know that you're talking about a point and not a circle. So if you have the equation of a circle in general form and you put it in standard form and the number that you get over here is positive, so this first situation here, then you know it is a circle because C is a positive number and that is R squared. All right, so the square root of that number would be your radius, so that is a circle. If that number C on the right side of that equation ends up being 0, like we just saw, then you're talking about a single point. You're not talking about a circle. If that number over here, that C, is negative, like in this situation, then you're talking about an equation that is inconsistent. You can't have something squared plus something squared and get a negative number because something squared is always positive. And so you'd have a positive plus a positive equals a negative, and that it does not happen. So if that number on the right side of the equation is negative, you're talking about no solution. There is no graph for that.